Greetings and welcome to the first ever Trey Irby FromSoftware Countdown Marathon. That's a lot of words, but what I've also got for you today is a lot of minutes. Over 164 minutes of FromSoftware videos. And joining me today to celebrate this momentous occasion is a longtime friend of the channel, Normal Horse.
It's wonderful to be here, Trey. I'm looking forward to watching all of these wonderful countdowns.
Thanks, Normal Horse. Personally, I'm a pretty big fan. It's great to have you here. So, without further ado, let's get started with the marathon.
Well, howdy there. Welcome to Ash Lake. I love hanging out down here. Pretty much the most chill spot in all of Lordran. Kick off my flip-flops and squish my feet around in the sand. Not really many other places around here where you can do that. I was just about to talk about the top 10 scariest things that you can encounter in Dark Souls. Before starting the list, the skeleton babies in the Tomb of the Giants, not scary. You farm the things for humanity and kill 10 of them in a single swing. Just in case you were wondering, they're not even on the list. They're not even an honorable mention. Let's get on with the list. Number 10, Black Knights. Now the Black Knight is the first really tough enemy that you come up against in Dark Souls. Most of us probably have a similar experience where we saw that first Black Knight in the Undead Burg, thought we were gonna be cute and sneak up on him, and then he proceeded to beat the living piss out of us. The reason that they're not higher on the list is because even at a very low level, you can learn how to circle strafe and cheese these guys, and then later in the game, they don't provide that much resistance, but there's that one guy in the tower in the Undead Parish. It's kind of a tough fight. Number 9, the Chaos Eaters. The Chaos Eaters really stand out. There's pretty much nothing else in the entire game quite as disgusting looking as these things. They look more like something you would find down at the bottom of the ocean, and they have that particularly gross look, like they came out of a Lovecraft story, right? They have that quality. Ooh, I don't want to touch that. It looks gross. And if that wasn't enough, if these things manage to grab your ass and throw you up over their head, they have a giant mouth on top of their body, full of teeth that looks like a freaking lamprey eel, and your body will just sit in there spinning around and it will degrade all of your equipment. Isn't that lovely? Number 8, Mass of Souls. I kind of lied on that last one. I said that the Chaos Eaters were the most disgusting thing in the game, and it's actually not 100% true. The Mass of Souls is even more disgusting, and it's definitely creepier. The Chaos Eater, it's a creature. It's basically just a really hideous creature, but it's a creature. The Mass of Souls is a disgusting pile of wet, decaying corpses rotting at the bottom of a flooded city for ages. And then when you, oh God, it's gonna make me sick just thinking about it. When you drain the water and you go down into the lower area of the New Londo ruins, you go into a dark room and the first thing you see is this hideous blob of corpses, and they've even like meshed together to form this big scary face. And then, if that's not scary and gross enough, they can vomit up goo, which, let me go ahead and clarify, that goo is rotting human flesh. Excellent. Also, they have a spear that can come out of their mouth. Number 7, I know this one's gonna sound a little weird. Hear me out. Oswald of Kareem. I know that sounds a little insane because I literally just listed 2 of the most horrific monstrosities in all of the land. And now, merely a man. Here's the deal. In Dark Souls, every time that you take out a boss, it's a wonderful feeling. You have this nice little respite from all the horror and all the death and all the pain and all the suffering and all the wonderful things that Dark Souls has in store for you. You have this brief period of time before you realize that there's some really horrible stuff you haven't started to encounter yet, right? Here's the thing. When you beat the gargoyles in the Undead Parish, you get to go up a ladder into the bell tower. You climb up the bell tower. You ring the bell, the first bell of awakening. You climb back down the bell tower, right? And what happens? Whew! You climb down the ladder, you turn around, and this dude is just standing right here like this. And he's not talking, he's just standing here like this. And he has this creepy, uncanny rictus, and it just sends chills up and down my body because I'm like, why are you so weird just standing there like that with that weird pose? Then you go to talk to him, and he even has creepy stuff to say.
Thou art welcome any time. It is only human to commit a sin.
Number 6, invaders. Now, if there's one thing that can really get me scared in Dark Souls, it's the possibility of losing all of those wonderful souls that I spent so much time accumulating. Whenever you're in human form, you have the wonderful opportunity to enlist one of your fellow players to jump into your game and help you clear the stage. However, when you go into human form, you can also be invaded by another player. Not all of us are sweethearts and like to be sun bros and help each other out. Some of us are assholes. There are times where an invader can be far scarier than any creature in the game, because the only way to get away from an invader is to run all the way to the boss fight room, and none of your bonfires will work while you're invaded. So you have the option to either stand your ground and possibly lose to somebody who is far better than you. They may be twinking, they may just have way better gear than you at that level. If you're not prepared to fight the boss, that's pretty much instant death, not to mention the fact that you may not be prepared to run all the way to the other side of the map to get to the boss. The reason it's not higher on the list is because if you're not in human form, they can invade you. Number 5, one of the most intimidating creatures in the game are those big skeleton beasts that you find in the Tomb of the Giants. Actually, you know, come to think of it, those skeleton archers, they really suck because they have that big bow. They can just knock your ass off the platform into oblivion. The Tomb of the Giants, it's super dark, horrible, and scary. If they kill you, you're gonna lose your souls. You're never even gonna figure out where they're at. The darkness is probably scarier than even the creatures. It makes the level one of the hardest levels in the game. And then you have to deal with Paladin Leroy. This guy, he's really strong. And then on top of that, before you even get to fight the boss, you have to fall down in this pit. And this pit makes you take a crap ton of damage. I mean, that's kind of scary, right? You have to preemptively have enough Estus to even get to the boss and survive. The more I'm thinking about it, I would have to say the entire fucking Tomb of the Giants has to be number 5. It's the hardest level in the game. It's the level with the most scary crap. Number 4, the basilisks. If you're gonna think about something that's scarier than the Tomb of the Giants, we would need to discuss something that's located in more than one area, because after all, when you complete the Tomb of the Giants, you're done. You don't really have to go back there. With the basilisks, they're not as easy to avoid. First of all, the depths, while you don't have to actually do the depths to finish the game, I always play through the depths. You have tons of rats that you can farm from humanity, and there's some pretty useful items down there. When you're in the depths, there are a few cute little traps that they have set up for you in the game where you can fall through a pit, and then when you do that, you are gonna land in the most ugly hell imaginable, trapped in a corner of the sewers, surrounded by these nasty little bug-eyed bastards, and they just spray fog all over you, and it turns you into stone and it kills you. Did you know that those big things, they're not even their real eyes? You can see how tiny their eyes are, those little evil beady eyes that these little bastards have. And the thing that really sucks about these guys is once they spray their evil fog on you and they curse you, they will kill you. And the curse status in Dark Souls, boy, does it ever suck. Because when you do respawn at the bonfire, you have half of your maximum HP to work with. That is the suckiest thing in the whole game that an enemy can do to you, because dying Hey, dying, I mean, it's Dark Souls. You're gonna do that plenty of times, right? But have your health bar cut in half? F that, bro. And not only that, you have to find this really expensive, rare item to get rid of the curse status. The second part of this is when you go through the Great Hollow, there are also basilisks. They're not in the super contained area like in the depths. The problem with the basilisks in the Great Hollow is that they like to conglomerate around where the ladders and the holes are through the floor. So you are going to encounter them as you go down. The Great Hollow is already a very difficult level, and the basilisks make it even worse. If you manage to make it down to the bottom of the Great Hollow and have to go back up for some reason, whoo boy, we'll get to that later. Number 3, bone wheel skeletons. There's not a lot of things in Dark Souls that are more horrible than getting cursed. However, if you can't even get through the area with a full health bar, that might suck even more. In Dark Souls, there are enemies that can kill you in seconds. Most of those enemies are bosses, and you don't have to deal with the majority of those types of enemies until the end of the level. In the catacombs, you run into these dicks, and boy, are they just a barrel of fun. They just gang up on you, spinning their wheels that have blades on them. I don't even understand how it works, because a skeleton, if you look at them, they kind of have their leg inside of the wheel, but somehow, you know, they just roll around and they just cut your ass into ribbons. Whenever I see bone wheels, I pretty much just start hauling ass. Now, the bone wheels in the catacombs, they suck. That's a total fact. Bone wheels that really suck are the ones that you find in the painted world of Ariamis, because before you can complete the level, you have to go down into this basement area. There is a switch that you must turn to open up the final door. That basement, you guessed it, is full of fucking bone wheels. You go down in there, and if you manage to get lucky enough to actually turn that switch without dying, well, they're probably gonna kill you before you get to the ladder to climb out of the basement. And if you manage to make it all the way to the ladder, they're probably gonna kill you before you can climb up the ladder. The bone wheel skeletons are so scary that at the end of the catacombs, you will haul ass running away from them into the Tomb of the Giants, the scariest, most horrible area in the game. The bone wheels are that scary. Number 2, I love the aesthetic of Dark Souls. It takes influence from fantasy, mostly dark fantasy, and one of the classic role-playing monsters is the idea that when you've done all your hard work and you look down and you see a beautiful treasure chest and you want to bend down and you want to grab that treasure and you want to flip that box open. No, it's not treasure. It's a giant mouth, and it just chomps your freaking head off. And in Dark Souls, you get the added bonus that if when the treasure chest starts to chomp on your head, if it doesn't kill you, it sprouts these enormous arms and legs, is like 15 feet tall. It will kick the piss out of you like a mule. So the Mimic is going to be what I would say is the scariest creature in Dark Souls, because for one, after the first time a Mimic gets you, you're gonna be scared of every treasure chest in every FromSoft game ever after this. Also, many times, the Mimics in Dark Souls like to hide in dark rooms, such as the one in Sin's Fortress. There's also one in Anne Orlando. And of course, we can't overlook the laughter. Yep, that's what I'd call nightmare fuel. Number 1, the scariest thing in Dark Souls is a very personal thing for me. It may be a personal thing for other players too. It's not a creature. It's not even a location. It's an idea. It's a status. It's a thing that can happen to you that's even worse than having your health bar cut in half, even worse than being scared of every dark room and being scared of every dark corner and treasure chest in the game. What I'm talking about is something that happened to me one time, and I have never forgotten it. This event that was so traumatic to me in the world of Dark Souls. I went down the Great Hollow and I went to Ash Lake and I rested at that bonfire. And you know what? I did not have the Lord Vessel, so I couldn't teleport back out of Ash Lake. I went down there, I had a lot of fun. I was just singing and dancing and just looting and killing clam monsters, and I went to the stone dragon. I cut his tail off like an asshole, and you know, I had just a big old time down there. And then when it was time to leave, I realized that there was no way to teleport out. I had to go back up the tree. The problem is, when I started going back up the tree, well, it's pretty tough. You know, you have the platforming, you have all those little spots where you can slip and fall, and that sucks really bad. But then we come back to the basilisks that we talked about earlier, and the basilisks, well, they managed to curse me, and with half of a health bar, I was not able to get back up the tree. I could not get to any items to take off my curse. So I ended up stuck in Ash Lake, and I couldn't get out. And after trying several times, I had to delete that character. And to this day, I will never go down to Ash Lake without the Lord Vessel. And the aggravation and stress that I went through trying to make it back up that tree with the itty bitty health bar that I had that early in the game. Yeah, that was the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me in Dark Souls. So yeah, after all my playthroughs of the original Dark Souls, that is the most horrible, terrifying experience I can think of. So that was my list of the top 10 scariest things that you'll find in the world of Dark Souls. What'd you think about my list? If you liked the video, I would love for you to give me a thumbs up. Hit subscribe if you want to be alerted to new videos coming up on the channel. And if you disagree with the list, or if you have any ideas of things that I forgot, go ahead and leave it in the comments section. Share the video with a friend if you think they might enjoy it. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good day. Dark Souls. It's one of the best games ever made. This is a fact. And I'll tell you, if you've never played Dark Souls, you owe it to yourself to explore every single nook and cranny of this masterpiece. However, there are people like myself who have played the game multiple times, and there are some areas that I just don't want to deal with on every single playthrough. And that's the reason that I have this list of the top 10 skippable areas in Dark Souls. Before starting the list, I have one honorable mention, and that is the Undead Asylum. Now, the Undead Asylum is an area that you can go back to after achieving your access to Firelink Shrine. And the thing is, the Undead Asylum has lots of really high-level enemies, tons of very difficult knights. You even get to meet up with an old friend. And it has an extremely difficult boss fight. While there are a few good items, there is some souls to be had and some upgrade materials. I just don't think it's really worth it unless you're really prepared. Number 10, the Undead Burg. It is a fact that you can actually skip the first level of the game if you have the Master Key as your starting item, or if you pick the Thief class, which comes with the Master Key automatically. All you have to do is you just go down the tower through the Valley of Drakes, and boom, you're already in Darkroot Basin. You didn't even have to deal with the Undead Burg. I will say that this is low on the list because Undead Burg is a good place to get your bearings, and also it's a good place to farm for humanity. Number 9, Undead Parish. Now, by skipping the Undead Burg, you are also going to be skipping the parish. And the main aggravating things you will be not having to deal with would be the Balder Knights, which can be kind of aggravating for new players. That whole annoying bridge with the dragon that sometimes you have to bait him down to get past, and he can kind of get on my nerves, to be honest. You're also gonna be skipping the gargoyle boss fight, which the gargoyle boss fight, while I think it is easy, if you summon in Solaire especially, it's very easy. It's a lot of free souls that you're going to be skipping, and there's also a Firekeeper soul that you can get there, not to mention the elevator shortcut. But if you don't really feel like it's what you care about right then, it's an okay area to skip.
Number 8, Lower Undead Burg. Really the only reason to go into the Lower Undead Burg is to unlock the sorcery trainer who can sell you spells and some pretty good rings like the Bellowing Dragon Crest ring. And the gear that you find in the Lower Undead Burg is pretty garbage. The thief set, I just don't really use it at all. The only other thing that you're really gonna find here is the Capra Demon, and boy, just f him. Number 7, the Depths. If you skip the Lower Undead Burg, you're also gonna be skipping the Depths. You know, that's really okay, because in the Depths, you have the big spooky gaping dragon who does drop a dragon weapon that I don't really find all that necessary. I don't really end up using it at any point that I can recall. I'm trying to think, the only other thing that you're really gonna find in the Depths, there are rats you can farm humanity from, and then there's a million basilisks. Boy, sure hate to skip that. Number 6, Ash Lake. Ash Lake is almost like a non-area in the game to me. It's quiet, it's peaceful, there's not a lot going on. You got the clam guys, you can farm them for purging stones, and there is a Hydra if you want to just get some more souls, I guess. Then there's the Stone Dragon who has his covenant. You can cut his tail off and get a weapon. There's not really anything that great in Ash Lake. The end of Sigmire's quest, that is pretty much the only real reason you would want to go to Ash Lake, because you do get a Titanite slab if you complete it. Other than that, there's really not a good reason to go here if you've already seen it once. Number 5 is the Great Hollow. And now we're getting to areas that aren't just skippable, but damn, like seriously, you want to skip this shit because it sucks. What I mean by this is the Great Hollow is a giant platforming level in a game that is not designed for platforming. It's basically just one huge falling puzzle. And to make it just amazing, it also has basilisks in it because it wasn't hard enough already. If you've already experienced this BS one time, why make yourself do it again? Number 4, Darkroot Garden. Now, Darkroot Garden is an area that has a lot of nothing. There is one really cool armor set you'll find, and there are a million bush monsters, and I just do not care for dealing with them. And that's one reason this area is so high on the list for skippable. It's just not that fun to just run around like a maniac in the woods, and you don't find much of anything that's that useful. Generally for myself, I will go to the Undead Parish, and I'll do that area to kill the gargoyles just to get enough souls to get the Crest of Artorias so I can skip Darkroot Garden. It's a waste of time, F that place. Number 3, the Painted World. A lot of people are gonna tell you the Painted World is one of the coolest areas in the game. And it is, it's very unique. I like the Painted World a lot. However, I'm putting it so high on the list because of the fact that if you just really do not want to get stuck in an area that you may not be prepared to complete, you definitely do not want to go into the Painted World of Ariamis, because the Painted World can only be escaped through completing it. And when I say completing it, I don't mean you get to just run on through the level and go out the back door. It's not like that at all. First of all, the bonfire is cut off from all the other bonfires. They'll tell you that as soon as you get there, and that really does suck. But what really sucks even harder is the fact that the only way to get out is to open a giant door
that is powered by a switch that is in a basement with a shit ton of bone wheel skeletons. No ma'am, do not want it. Cancel, 86 that, do not pass go, do not collect $200, do not go to the painted world unless you are like really, really prepared. Number 2, Lost Izalith. There is a section of Lost Izalith that you can skip using the Chaos Covenant, and this is so high on the list because if you play as a pyromancer and you put all of your souls into your flame, well, it just so happens that the only 2 enemies in the game who don't give a damn about your firepower is the Fire Sage Demon and the Centipede Demon. And they're both located in this same area. And the good news is if you have enough humanity to give to the Chaos Witch, you get to just skip them and go on about your merry way. It's really a beautiful thing. Go pyromancy. Number 1, Blighttown. You knew it had to be Blighttown, right? And if you don't know this, you're about to know this. In Blighttown, it's the most painful time you'll ever have. It's worse than the Tomb of the Giants, actually. The only difference is you can skip Blighttown, and I'll tell you how. What you do is you get that master key, you go through the back way, through the Valley of the Drakes. When you go in, there is a wheel that you can jump on, and when you jump on that water wheel, it will take you all the way down to the other side of Blighttown, and you will have skipped all of that horrible, nightmare, putrid, awful, garbage, shameful pain. Oh God. Play through it one time, but every time after that, no, no, no. Blighttown. No. Well, that's it. That is my list of the top 10 areas in Dark Souls that you can skip. What did you think? Did you agree with the list? Do you think that there's some areas that I left off? You think that maybe the order could be like in a little different way? All I can really say is I appreciate everybody who has just given me such a warm welcome to the YouTube Dark Souls community, because I love Dark Souls and I love talking about Dark Souls. It's my jam. It makes me feel I really appreciate you guys, and I thank you so much for watching the video. Please like the video if you liked it, comment, let me know what you thought. Subscribe if you want to stay tuned for more Dark Souls content, because I'm telling you, it's coming, baby. Hey, it's good to see you. You kind of caught me at a rough time in my life. I'm stuck here in Anne Orlando around the corner from those archers with the great bows, and I don't have any poison darts or poison arrows right now. So until I figure out how I'm gonna get out of this crap, why don't we talk about the top 10 ways to make Dark Souls easier? Before getting started with the list, I just want to talk about a couple of honorable mentions. First of all, take advantage of the fact that you don't have to go into every level that you run into. You can always come back later. You can even skip some for a period of time and come back when you're better prepared. Case in point, that disgusting toilet called Blighttown. You don't even want to go there if you do not have blooming purple moss clumps. Just remember, you can always come back later when you got the supplies. Second, just take your time moving through areas, because if you run through every single area, you're probably going to miss a lot of cool gear and items, and you may end up aggroing way too many enemies that are going to kind of kick the shit out of you when they catch up to you. Darkroot Garden is not fun at all when you're getting reamed by 800 bush monsters. Okay, now we got that crap out of the way, let's get on with the list. Number 10, Master Key. When you start a new character in Dark Souls, there are items that you can use. Yeah, the fire bombs are good to help you beat the Asylum Demon, but he's kind of the easiest boss in the game anyway, so fuck that. Get the Master Key, because you can go to the Valley of Drakes, go back door to Blighttown, and skip that entire level until you actually want to come back and do it. I'm not saying that that's the only reason to get the Master Key,
But skipping the most aggravating level in the game, that should be a good enough reason to put it on the list. Number 9, take advantage of the fact that when in human form, you can summon other players and NPCs to help you kill an area boss or just clear the zone. It's also very useful if the area is extremely tough. You can get some people that are nice enough that they'll let you summon them over and over to clear out all the enemies while you just hang back and stay alive. It's a very useful strategy. Number 8, stay hollow. I know this sounds extremely contradictory from what I just said, but there are areas in the game where having a teammate really doesn't help you at all. There are some things that you just need to do alone, and it's easier to run through an area instead of summoning in somebody who doesn't know what you're doing and just ends up getting lost or killed. It's also very useful due to the fact that when you're hollow, you can't get invaded. Number 7, get the sunlight maggot. It's cool that you can go into the catacombs and all, and you can kill the necromancers and get the cool little skull lantern because, you know, it looks like something from a fucking Tim Burton movie. But that thing sucks ass because your shield hand now has a stupid lantern in it. And if you go to Lost Izalith, you kill that bug and you get the sunlight maggot helm. Now you have a glorious flashlight to wear on your beautiful head while you got your sword and you got your shield and you're in the Tomb of the Giants, the darkest area in the game, and you're actually able to see and fight and defend yourself. Holy shit, it's better than Christmas. Number 6, take advantage of the fact that backstabs and plunging attacks are a thing. I see people all the time start off the game where the tutorial literally teaches you how to do a plunging attack on a large enemy, and then they never use that for the rest of the game. What the hell is up with that? Plunging attacks are awesome, and with just about every humanoid type enemy in the game, you can also do backstabs, and doing those ridiculous crits, they let you even take out Dark Knights early in the game. Number 5, explore when you're poor. You do not have souls, that is the perfect time to just go running off through the woods like a maniac and grabbing all the loot you can find. For instance, if you go to Darkroot Garden and you grab that badass Elite Knight set and those giant stone dicks kill you, well, it's fine because you're just gonna teleport back to your bonfire with a new set of armor because in Dark Souls, you don't lose items when you die, you only lose souls and humanity. Number 4, sometimes you just want to be the running man and you want to learn how to juke properly. There are areas in the game that if you've played them through enough times, you just don't want to take your time to go through everybody. So some areas like the catacombs, it's a very viable strategy. Once you learn the lay of the land, you can just zoom on through all that bullshit without having to deal with all the annoying traps and skeletons up the ass. Number 3, combat patience is a virtue. There's a lot of times in this game where you're gonna get punished severely for being way too aggressive. And with some fat ass demon trying to smash you into a million pieces, it's usually a better idea to roll out of the way, block up, and get prepared for that opening and attack when it's safe. Trust me, you're gonna live a lot longer this way and you're gonna be a lot more successful in combat. Number 2, sorcery is OP as hell. You probably guessed that this was gonna be on the list somewhere. It would probably be a lot of people's number 1 pick. But for number 2, I'm gonna say sorcery because it is so strong in a game like Dark Souls where the majority of the enemies are melee fighters to just be able to stand back and pew, 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 pew. There's a lot of guys that you can take out before you even get them aggroed to you. You can like go into the depths and you can just pew pew dudes from the edge of the railing that are down there where the butcher is and they can't even do shit about it. Those guys. Oh yeah, also, if you get Dusk of Ulasil, you can get spells from her, like the one that makes you almost completely invisible, and you can run through a lot of the game without even aggroing a lot of the creatures. That's bullshit, and I love it. And the number 1 way to make Dark Souls an easy game is to go pyromancy. Pyromancy is so strong in this game. You can literally just farm out souls, get a trainer, and just keep pumping those souls into your fire's level. The first time I beat Dark Souls, it was with a pyromancer, and it presents almost no challenge. The only enemies in the game that are bosses that even will have any resistance to your fire is Quelaag, who you can summon an NPC to help you kill. Then there is the Centipede Demon and the Demon Fire Sage, which can both be skipped. So that's 3 enemies that have high fire resistance that are basically not even a real problem. And everything else, Pyromancy just blasts their ass into oblivion. Pyromancy, baby. Well, that's the list. I'm still stuck here in Orlando, but I feel a lot better now that I've gotten to take my mind off of all the aggravation of those archers. So I think that if you follow these tips, Dark Souls will be an extremely easy game. Well, maybe not an extremely easy game, but it should be somewhat easier. So what'd you think about the list? If you got any disagreements, or again, maybe something should have been a little higher than something else, let me know in the comments section. Give me a thumbs up if you like the content. Share it with a friend if you think they would like to hear about some weird Dark Souls crap, because I love talking about this shit. And I just want to say again, thank you all so much for the support and for watching the videos. You've really helped me find a new invigoration for doing YouTube content. Love you guys. See you next time.
Hey there, good to see you. You probably recognize the building behind me here. It's come to that point where this is the only path I have left to take. And since I enjoy procrastinating, let's talk about the top 10 unskippable levels in Dark Souls. Before getting started with the list, I would just like to point out that I will not be including any areas that are basically glorified hallways or merely boss rooms. Maybe one day that will be content for another list. Also, I have an honorable mention, which is the Crystal Caves. The Crystal Caves just barely count in this category for me because it's a little bit longer than a long hallway and it has a few enemies in it, so it almost counts as a level in my opinion. The things that I do really like about the Crystal Caves, the unique aesthetic. I love the look of just walking around on giant crystals, and I simply adore the invisible walkways. It's just like Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade. It's so awesome, and I hold my breath every time I cross them. Let's get started. Number 10, the Demon Ruins. It takes a lot to be uglier than Blighttown, but when your entire color palette is comprised of muddy reds and disgusting tans and browns, you've really got a shoe in there. And I'll tell you, if you really think having unique and interesting creatures are great, well, f you. Because what we're gonna do in the Demon Ruins is we're gonna take enemies that were bosses in previous levels, and we're just gonna make them minor opponents in this stage. I know a lot of people might say that this is a cool thing about the Demon Ruins because it makes you feel a lot more powerful now that you can take out this boss 10 at a time. In my opinion, it just feels kind of lazy, and I think it would be cooler to have some unique creatures that are located only in this area. For example, the big caterpillar things that hang out of the ceiling, they're kind of annoying, but they are at least unique to the area, and I appreciate that. I do really like the concept of exploring an ancient ruin. I think that's a cool idea. I just think that the way it was presented could have been done a little bit better. At least it has a skip for Lost Izalith. Number 9, the New Londo Ruins. You know, I still remember that time that I decided to go a different route from Firelink, and instead of going to the Undead Burg, I decided to go down and take the elevator, and then I wound up on the dismal beach of the New Londo Ruins. And there was this vague sense of despair emanating around the area. I remember going around exploring the little staircase to the side, and then we found Rickert, and he's so scared that he's got himself locked in a cell, and he's talking about being so afraid of everything. I had no idea what kind of nightmare I was about to run into. Then you find this item called a transient curse, and you're like, well, what the hell does this thing do? I haven't found one of these yet. And when you finally get the nerve to run down that wooden walkway and you run into the ghost, holy shit, what a moment, right? You find out really quickly that you have to use a transient curse just to be able to attack the ghosts. This area can be really scary and intimidating. However, personally, this area turns into frustrating very quickly because of the fact that everything looks the same, and it's so easy to get lost that I've actually had playthroughs where I ran out of transient curses and had to leave and go farm souls to go buy that item just to finish the stage. Now that is a pain in the ass. One thing I will say that is pretty cool about this level though is the fact that you can drain the water and discover that you have been basically walking around on the rooftops like Spider-Man the whole level, and now you're actually on the bottom floor where you get to meet one of my favorite things ever, the mass of souls. Blech. And then you get to run into the dark wraiths, who are just the most OP bastards ever, who have that dark hand and they can freaking steal your humanity. That's some bullcrap. I think that New Londo Ruins is sort of a good level, but there are things about it that really piss me off. The fact that you can't summon in a helper until you've already drained the water, that's the easy part of the level. Once you've drained the water, all you really have to do is deal with the dark wraiths and then fight the boss. That's kind of it. The hard part is getting done with the damn ghosts and making your way through that maze and figuring out which switch you gotta turn and where you gotta go. All in all, I would say that the New Londo Ruins is pretty spooky. It's pretty scary and intimidating. It also can be mind-numbingly frustrating. But the reason it's not number 10 is because it is not as boring as the Demon Ruins. Number 8, Dark Root Garden. Dark Root Garden, it's okay. It's not as boring or as ugly as the Demon Ruins, and it's not as frustrating as the New Londo Ruins. And it's nice to be able to run around in the woods and just observe foliage and natural creatures in the forest just for a change, you know, because there's so many old broken up villages and castles in the game that it's kind of a unique area in this game to have a forest level. One really neat thing about Darkroot Garden is that there is a kitty hiding in a window who has the scariest mouth I've ever seen, and she can give you a covenant that is called the Forest Hunters, and you can join them and you can just participate in ganks just all the live long day, because while sometimes it's hard to find a summon in Dark Souls, it is never hard to get invaded in Darkroot Garden. Speaking of cats, I need to point out that there is one area of Darkroot Garden that if you mess up and find yourself in the wrong corner, you get to fight these giant cats that are like the size of a bear, and they have that same huge monster mouth that goes back way too far. And honestly, they should have been on my scariest Dark Souls list. Probably the most memorable part of Darkroot Garden is the awesome ass boss fight against Sif the Great Grey Wolf. Number 7, the Duke's Archives. I have a love-hate relationship with the Duke's Archives because it's a neat concept for a level. I do like the idea of exploring this library, and you have these cool trick puzzles like the staircase that you have to rotate. But I seem to always have a hard time with the enemies when I get there, and those crystal skeletons just beat the shit out of me, and I am never prepared when I show up in this place. But the Duke's Archives has some really neat stuff that is only in this level. For instance, it has a callback to the intro of Demon Souls where you go in to fight Seath and he kills you immediately and you have no way out of it. It's just a death that has to take place in the game, except this time you spawn at a bonfire that I guess he has linked into a prison cell. That's my logic anyway. I also really like the fact that there's this weird little side mission you have to do where you go up and you turn off a record player that the Snake Men are using because, you know, the Snake Men, they love their Perry Como records, right? Am I right? Also, you've got the squiddy waifus just shuffling and moaning about all over the library, and it's just great. Number 6, the Undead Asylum. The Undead Asylum is one of my favorite levels in Dark Souls. It's the one that teaches you the ropes, teaches you the basics of gameplay, gets you going with a good foundation to start your Dark Souls adventure. And it feels kind of warm and safe in a way because most of the hollows there are pretty pathetic. Some of them don't even attack you. A lot of them just lean in the corner and cry and shit. And I gotta say, I love, again, the way that Dark Souls makes a callback to Demon Souls, except in this, they subvert your expectations because in Demon Souls tutorial, you die. If you manage to kill the boss of the tutorial in Demon Souls, a bigger boss will kill you. So it's mandatory that you die in the tutorial. In Dark Souls, that's not the case. You show up, you see the big demon, and me, being a person who played Demon Souls first, I just assumed I had to die to this thing, but I fought him anyway, but I got killed. And then when I respawned at the bonfire, I said, wait a minute, so I have to kill him? So I kind of freaked out a little bit because I didn't realize that there was a door that was open on the other side of the wall down there. And then eventually, you know, I figured it out. And this was before I got the info about throwing the black fire bombs at the Asylum Demon. That is an easy way to kill them on the first try. All in all, I think the Undead Asylum is a fantastic tutorial level and one of the most well-crafted stages in all of Dark Souls. And I really like those outdoor areas. They look so nice and peaceful. I would totally go hiking there. Number 5, the Catacombs. I think we all remember that first time that we thought we would be cute and run through the cemetery behind Firelink. And we said, hey, you know what? I can't kill these skeletons, but I might as well run past them and just see what the hell is on the other side of that graveyard. And then, what is your reward for juking all the skeletons and getting to the other side of the cemetery? Well, you get a staircase in almost total darkness, and then you get these giant red skulls flying through the air screaming at you, and they blow up, do a crap ton of damage. It's just outstanding. If you manage to get past the screaming skulls that explode and do a ton of damage, well, then you get to run into what I like to call Skeleton City. Skeletons are all over the place, and the crazy thing about these guys is when you knock them down, they get back up. That's because there are necromancers hidden all over the catacombs, and they're so cool because when you knock a skeleton down, they just use their voodoo devil magic to just bring them back up. What a bunch of swell guys. If you do manage to make it through this area and get past all the skeletons, you'll find yourself in a wide open space. I mean, there's like, I don't know if you can see the sky here, but I mean, it's at least opened up a little bit. It's not quite so dark and claustrophobic, and it's kind of a relief until you realize there are more skeletons, and of course, more necromancers. So everywhere you turn, there's a skeleton, skeletons all over the place. And then necromancers, they're really hard to find because they like to hide and get in their little strategic places where they can raise the skeletons with their magic and stuff. You've also got these traps in the form of these neat stone statues that will be up on the wall, and it's a narrow ledge, so you got to be close to the statue. and then you're just scooting on across, and then every once in a while, just spikes come out, and damn, do they hurt really bad. The Catacombs has other neat stuff in it too, like there's these weird puzzles where you have to go find switches and turn them, figure out where that moved something. Is that a ladder? Can I go up here now? And a hidden bonfire. I think maybe the best hidden bonfire in the game, because I played the game many times before I found this joker. Also, the Catacombs has the nicest, most sweetest blacksmith you could ever hope to meet. Also, he scares the shit out of me when he busts through the wall like the Incredible Hulk. There is a hallway that has a Titanite demon just hanging around in total darkness, waiting on you to walk up and get your ass kicked by him. Another thing that should have been on my scariest parts of Dark Souls list. That is 2 now that I have missed. For shame. Another neat thing you can find in this area, the coffin that you can hide inside. You think you're hiding from the Titanite demon, but what you're really doing is if you lay in there and you have an Eye of Death in your inventory, Nito's minions will carry you off to his lair, and then you can join his covenant and get a cool new spell. Another unique aspect to the Catacombs that makes it special is that while you kill necromancers, randomly one of them drops the skull lantern. But we know the skull lantern is dog shit, so don't use it. You want the sunlight maggot. But it is neat that there's a special item here that's only located in this area. Everybody knows that the worst thing in the Catacombs that you have to deal with are those damn bone wheel skeletons. Yeah, they suck really hard. We know they suck. They're the worst things ever. Cancel bone wheels. Hashtag cancel bone wheels. A lot of people talk crap about the boss of the Catacombs. Pinwheel is definitely a pushover. It almost takes a certain level of skill to actually die to this opponent. But I give Pinwheel credit, because while he is a slight annoyance and not much of a challenging boss fight, he has a 33% chance of dropping the Mask of the Father. And that means Giant Dad time. Number 4, the Tomb of the Giants. The Tomb of the Giants also has a really interesting, unique take on the Dark Souls level, which is that it is so dark that you have to have a special item just to see. And even with that special light providing item, you honestly can't even see that much. The enemies in the Tomb of the Giants are extremely intimidating, as you would imagine. That giant skeleton that you ran into in the cemetery, well, there's just tons of them in here. In fact, some of them have even learned how to use a great bow. They can pull it back and pop you right off the edge of a ledge into the just total abyss and to an instant death. And even worse, sometimes they can take the bow and pop you off of a ledge into a pit full of giant machete-wielding skeletons. Probably the scariest enemy in the Tomb of the Giants, though, are the skeleton beasts that move around on all fours like big-ass bear skeleton monsters. God, I do not like dealing with those guys. Let's see, you got Paladin Leroy, you've got your occurrence of Patches in this game, where he kicks your ass down into a pit. You do get to find some treasure though, and you get to run into a couple of psycho clerics and whip their ass. There are the skeleton babies. There are the weird skeleton pillars that you have to fight. I think they're really gross, by the way. And eventually you get to run into tons of little pinwheels and gotta kill them, gotta get that mask. Nito, he's a pretty cool boss. When it comes to skeletons and death-related enemies in video games, he is very unique and cool and interesting. I dig Nito and I dig this level. It's hard as hell, but it's pretty badass too. Number 3, the Undead Parish. The Undead Parish is a cornucopia of all things Dark Souls. It's the level that if you really wanted to give somebody a good representation of what this game is all about, I think this is probably the best example. First of all, as soon as you enter the parish, you get to meet our homeboy Solaire, who is, without a doubt, the most renowned, popular NPC of the entire series. Next, you get to encounter this dark red hellkite that just burns fire up and down the bridge, and now you got to find a way around that. Interestingly enough, this is another callback to Demon Souls, where instead of crossing the top of the bridge, you actually have the option to go underneath it. Upon entering the church area, you see a tower that has a Black Knight, which is probably the most intense Black Knight battle in the entire game, because you're in super tight quarters and he has this gigantic greatsword that can hit you pretty much anywhere in the tower. When you get past him, now you have a giant armored boar you have to figure out how to deal with. And if you don't know, the little trick of throwing the undead attractant into the fire to make the boar kill himself with fire is it's just great. I love doing it every time. Then you get to go into the church. You get to deal with the Balder Knights, and they're super badass. You get to deal with that giant knight who's protecting the Firekeeper's soul. That's a pretty intense battle for early in the game. Then you have a channeler up top, and he's dancing the jig. He's dancing the night away, and he's got, 20,000 little naked dudes up there hanging out with him. When you get past that, you get to go find Lautrec hidden in a little cell, and you don't really know that he's a scumbag yet, but that guy. But you can summon him to help you fight the gargoyles, which is really wild. Not to mention you can get Solaire to help you do it, which is cool. And speaking of gargoyles, the gargoyles in the Undead Parish are one of the coolest boss fights in the game, because you get to literally fight a boss who, once they get weak enough, they just summon another one to help as backup. Once you kill the boss, you get to go ring the Bell of Awakening, and you get to basically trigger the first major event in Dark Souls. And of course, the cherry on top of the Undead Parish is when you ring that bell and you come down those stairs and you get the shit scared out of you by good old Oswald. So now you might be thinking, well, how could a level be any better than that? The Undead Parish has everything a guy could look for in a Dark Souls stage. And my answer to that is, if the stage is really fun, then I'm putting it above that. Number 2, Sin's Fortress. Some of you guys might think I'm crazy for saying this, but I actually really love Sin's Fortress. I think it is so fun. The snake men are kind of tough. They're kind of assholes, but it really feels good to just kick their asses off that railing down into the pit. And not only that, you get to find out if you can survive the fall. That way down there are Titanite demons just all over the place. It's infested with Titanite demons in the fortress. And there's all sorts of goodies down there. And if you do manage to go, you can get back up out of there and go back through the fortress like normal if you want. Of course, the star of the fortress is all of the big crazy traps, like the swinging blades, the giant balls just rolling around. There's that fun puzzle you get to do where you figure out, okay, if I make the ball shoot out this way, it breaks open a wall that goes nowhere. Okay. I break this one. Oh, it killed that snake guy. Awesome. And then you break this one, and then you say, oh, wait a minute. There's a dude. There's a dude down here. It's Big Head Logan. What's up? So that's really cool. Another thing that's fun about this level is it's sort of like a Super Mario Brothers stage, because you can really train yourself to speed run through this stage and see how fast you can move through the level without getting killed by any of the traps. I just kind of think it's fun to do that. But I digress. There is a whole area outside once you get through with the interior of the fortress where there are giants throwing exploding cannonballs at you. It's just madness. And then when you get to the end of the fortress, you get to fight the Iron Golem, who is maybe the funniest boss fight in the whole game, because all you gotta do is just keep whacking his shins and then you just make him fall off the ledge like a dumbass. It's fantastic. I love this stage. Okay, So how do you top that? Number 1, Anne Orlando. Anne Orlando is the level in the game where Dark Souls really ramps up the difficulty. It's the level that makes your jaw hit the floor when you see how amazing everything looks. It's the first stage where things look nice. It's just so unusual to see buildings that are not rotted and covered in weeds and grass and corpses. Then when you get there, you find your first weird mystical yellow barrier on the side over there by the Duke's archives. You notice that all the enemies are huge giant monsters. Of course, there's a mimic to hang around at the beginning just to scare the shit out of you. And also, we get to meet our first firekeeper who talks in this game. Next, you get to run into more gargoyles, which will drop the items that the first gargoyle did not drop in the parish. There's a really cool puzzle where you have to turn a platform and figure out how to get to the other side of the city, which is neat. And then when you go inside of all of the big fancy buildings, you run into a whole new kind of knight. And these silver knights, they are really badass. And of course, you cannot omit the great bow silver knights that will shoot you off of that freaking railing. I don't even know how many times I've died to those things, but they suck. There's an area later in the game where you get to run into Solaire, and he's chilling and he kind of flirts with you a little bit. Then there is this super scary tiny church in the building that has a Titanite demon just chilling in a corner by himself, just waiting on somebody to walk into this room so he can smash them into the floor. It's also another pretty scary moment, come to think of it. But I'd say the scariest thing in Anne Orlando is the fact that there is a basement that has all kinds of gear. In fact, it's got Havel's gear. But there's also that one mimic hiding in that room, and it is almost completely dark in there. It just scares the crap out of me every time. Another neat feature of Anne Orlando is mega waifu Guinevere. At least we think that's who she is until we find out that she's just a illusion. But once you knock the illusion out, the whole city goes black and it gets really creepy. Even though there's way less enemies, it's somehow scarier now because it's just dark and empty for the most part. Also, Anne Orlando has a hidden boss fight in the form of Dark Sun Gwendolyn with his creepy little tentacles coming out the bottom of his dress or whatever he's wearing. And I don't even know how many times I played this game before I accidentally found out how to even fight this guy. There's a giant blacksmith who is enormous, but luckily he's a super chill dude and he hooks us up with some badass gear so we can build Giant Dad. But everybody knows the real crown jewel of this level, and maybe of Dark Souls all as a whole, is the boss fight against Dragon Slayer Ornstein and Executioner Smo, which is maybe one of the best boss fights ever in a video game. It's definitely one of the best in the series. All in all, I've just got to say that Anne Orlando is the most amazing, immaculate, complete level that just really takes your breath away and makes you thankful that you're playing Dark Souls. Well, that took a little bit longer than I thought. And I guess it turns out that when I started thinking of things that I wanted to say about the unskippable levels in Dark Souls, I just had a whole lot to talk about. So what'd you think about the list? Did you agree with it? Please give me a like if you enjoyed the video. Please comment and tell me what you thought below. Share with one of your friends if you think they might enjoy the content. Thank you guys all so much for the support and for watching and subscribing. Have a good day. We'll see you next time.
Greetings, Dark Souls fans. It would appear that the last time I did a top 10 scariest things in Dark Souls, my trauma actually blocked quite a few things. So now I've dug deep in the recesses of my poisoned mind and found 10 more of the scariest things. in Dark Souls. Before getting started with this list, I have a couple of honorable mentions. First of all, what's something that we all hate? Maggots, right? But luckily, you don't have to deal with them in Dark Souls, unless you're stupid enough to attack one of those egg-bearing guys who was just minding their own business, crawling on their hands and knees and crying or whatever the hell they do. And what happens? You have a crap load of maggots bust out to just whip your ass. Next, when you find the broken pendant, you really, unless you looked up a guide, have no idea what the hell it does. But if you manage to go back to Darkroot Basin, where you killed that piss-colored golem, you will see a portal. And once you touch that portal, the scariest nightmare hand that has ever existed in a video game comes out in slow motion to grab you to make sure that your pants are full of... All right, now that we're done with that shit, let's get on with the list. Number 10, the depths is a pretty spooky place to go into. When you first show up, there's just a couple of hollows, but then you run into those butchers and they're kind of scary. I think I've actually heard that the butchers are women. That is a big, scary ass woman. Anyway, you get down further into the depths and you don't run into any more hollows. You walk in the nasty muck and you're thinking this is probably the sewer that all these undead people use. That's so gross. But then it's fine because you look over and you see a beautiful glowing treasure here to reward you for all of your hard work. And you go in the corner and BAM! Scared the shit out of me the first time I played that game. Number 9. So remember we were talking about Darkroot Basin, and I seem to gloss over the fact that when you first arrive, giant balls of water are flying through the air, just knocking the crap out of you. And if it's early in the game, they can almost one-shot you, right? I ran to the source of these giant water bowls. And when I went over there, I discovered a scary ass Hydra. And this thing not only is enormous, but when you get close enough to it, it starts to shoot its heads into the sand. And the thing about the Hydra, the reason I have it on this list is look at this fucking picture. That is scary. It's probably the scariest representation of a snake that I've ever seen in a video game. The reason it is so low on the list is because thankfully this thing is a major wuss and you can kill his ass very easily. Number 8, you got down into the bowels of the Tomb of the Giants. The scariest, darkest, most dangerousest place in all of Lordran. And then what happens? You ran into a man. The only guy that's not a skeleton or a phantom. I mean, he's got to be cool, right? Well, if you don't know already, Patches is quite possibly the biggest asshole in all of FromSoft Gaming's library and kicks your ass into a pit in the scariest, hardest level of the game, and you do not know how to get up and you don't know what you're about to run into. That's a shitty feeling to have, and that's a bad place to have that feeling. Number 7, it's really weird in the Valley of the Drakes. It's not exactly a level. It's sort of a in-between, right? There's a few drakes. They're kind of difficult early in the game. My first try, I went into the Valley of Drakes. I kept on pushing. At first I tried to go into Blighttown, but then when I saw that nasty green shit going in the air, I was like, nope, don't like the look of this. And when we went the other way, we saw this dead, rotting dragon with a treasure laying down by his face. And you know, when you play Dark Souls, one thing you get used to finding are lots of dead people with treasure. So you see a dead dragon just kind of leaning over there on the edge of the cliff, and you think, hey, let's grab that shit, you know? and you grab one of the treasures, and then you're like, hell yeah, that was pretty great. Then you grab the next one.
Newsflash, asshole!
Yeah. Number 6. Now, due to the nature of this list, a lot of the things in this game are really going to scare you the most the first time you encounter them. And I think a great example of that is when you finally get down to the bottom of the depths and you run into the boss and you think, huh, look at that cute little head just coming up over the water. Oh my God. Number 5. So on my previous top 10 scariest things in Dark Souls list, I talked about the Mass of Souls. And the Mass of Souls, it is scary in the way of being creepy and disturbing to look at. However, if there's anything in New Londo that your ass should be scared of, it's Skeletor here, because this guy is a man and he will show you when he beats your ass down with that greatsword. And let's not forget that if you're really unlucky, he might use the Dark Hand and actually steal your humanity too. That's some scary shit. Number 4, you didn't have to go to the lower Undead Burg, but it's your first time playing Dark Souls and you wanted to explore. I mean, why not? You paid for the game, right? You might as well check out every level. And then what did you get for that? You got to the end and you ran into this guy. He's got 2 dogs with him, which already sucks. But then the room is like the size of a tennis ball. So you're trying to fight this dude who has blades, you know, as big as freaking Shaquille O'Neal on both hands. And he's swinging them at you. And just a side note about this guy, I think, like, subconsciously, he really scares the piss out of me because he looks like these guys from Time Bandits. And man, when I was a kid, whew, that was scary. Number 3, it really shouldn't be a surprise that at the end of the insanely hard DLC for Dark Souls, there is going to be something unspeakably terrible that you're going to have to deal with. And Dark Souls does not disappoint in this department because boy, oh boy, the first time I went through that fog gate and had to deal with Manus, the father of the abyss, I was like, what the hell am I even looking at? I mean, I think he killed me in like 12 seconds. And not only that, but in his area, it's so dark that you can't even tell how big he is. And man, just look at this thing. That's crazy. Number 2, speaking of the Artorias of the Abyss DLC, there is a point early on in the level which has a nice callback to the Undead Burg where the red Hellkite lands on the bridge, and since you're just a little piss-ass undead that nobody cares about, she just flies on without noticing you. Except when you go to Ulasil, Calamite ain't playing that shit. He lands on that bridge and you think, oh my God, do not let that thing see me or I'm just gonna die right here on the bridge. And then he turns and looks right at you as if to say,
Tonight, you.
And the number 1 scariest thing, you probably guessed it, are the Titanite demons. Okay, let me explain. I have several reasons why these guys have to be on the top. Yeah, Calamite is scary, but you know what? You don't have to go into the DLC if you don't want to. But Titanite demons are all over the place. If you want to go into Darkroot Garden via Andre's blacksmith shop, you got to deal with a Titanite demon. And that one, he's not as scary, but they all have a general scariness due to the fact that A, they don't have a head, B, they're missing a leg, they're just crawling around the ground, just kind of wildly swinging at you, and once you get too far away for them to swing at, then they start throwing this really powerful magic at you. But the Titanite demons that I really specifically crap my pants for are like the one in Orlando that's in that tiny church, because you are not going to expect something that big in that tiny room. You're going to expect things the size of people, like the Silver Knights that you run into, right? Maybe a mimic here or there. Yeah, something small. But then you walk into that room and you're like, holy crap, bro. How did they even fit your ass in here? And you gotta know where to run. So it's just you smeared against the wall like peanut butter. Titanite catch pole. The other Titanite demon that I find to be really scary is the one in the catacombs, because you walk down that dark hallway and boom, there he is. And that's like the last thing you want to see. In fact, when you hear people talk about that's not somebody that I want to run into in a dark alley, this is exactly the kind of crap that they are talking about. Also, there is a Titanite demon in Lost Izalith that he just is sitting on that bridge, and he just, oh boy, he will get you sometimes. And silly me, I definitely can't leave out the horde of Titanite demons that are hanging out in the bottom of Sin's freaking fortress, because if there's one thing that you do not want to see in that place, it's a Titanite demon, because Sin's fortress is already bad. The snake men are tough. They're pretty hard to kill. They do a lot of damage. So the last thing you want to do is fall down into that pit of crap and deal with those freaking guys. So there it is. Another top 10 spooky things in Dark Souls. So what'd you think about the list? If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up. Share it with somebody that you think might like it. Please give me a comment. Give me some feedback. Let me know what you thought about the video. If this is your first time checking out the channel, my voice is a little rough because I have been sick, but I am on the mend. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. Hello there, and welcome to the Hunter's Dream. It's really nice and peaceful here. It's so tranquil, except when shit goes down and, you know, buildings get set on fire. The Soulsborne series has some really great and unique and interesting bosses, but when it comes to really twisted and disturbing bosses, Bloodborne has got everybody else beaten by like a mile. And rightly so, because much of the story of Bloodborne is heavily inspired by the writings of a man named H.P. Minecraft, who not only wrote very creepy stories, he wrote very weird creepy stories. There are some very interesting looking creatures in Bloodborne that make the horrors of Dark Souls look like characters from Paw Patrol.
These paws uphold the laws.
To celebrate FromSoft's most nightmarish game to date, I give to you
the 10 most disturbing bosses in Bloodborne. Number 10. The Merciless Watchers.
There's something fundamentally upsetting about seeing the human form twisted into a grotesque, horrible shape like this. And if you've ever been to a state fair or a Walmart, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Located within the Chalice dungeons, these 3 glistening human blobfish are just the tip of the iceberg for the type of body horror that Bloodborne has to offer. Their open wounds, just zombified look on their face, and weird rubbery look to their skin is bad enough. But I think the worst thing about the Merciless Watchers is when you have to squeeze past their fat fucking ass just to get to the cereal aisle to get my crunch berries.
Number 9. Celestial Emissary.
Like the Royal Rat
Vanguard.
and the Deacons of the Deep, the Celestial Emissary is a boss fight where you have to fight a bunch of little guys. So why are these little guys so creepy? To begin with, people are prone to be wary of anything with little tiny beady eyes, right? So not only do these jokers have little tiny beady eyes, they're glowing tiny little beady eyes. Spooky. While their big bulbous heads really remind me of those adorable mushroom people from Dark Souls, I gotta say that weird trance-like way that they just walk to you, it kind of puts me in the mind of the living humanities from the chasm of the abyss. And those things I find quite unsettling. And finally, there will be a point in the fight where one of the little alien dudes will grow to monstrous proportions. Now, this isn't inherently disturbing, but for some reason the big one starts to grow these tendrils out of his head. And when I see these tendrils, my face goes,
Number 8. Living failures.
ah, the living failures. You know, that's just what my dad used to call me. These things are big, their proportions are ridiculous, and they look like somebody took an action figure and just melted its head. How do these guys see where they're going? How do they even survive? All of these questions really bother me.
Number 7. Rom, the vacuous spider.
Okay, so a bug should not be making a list such as this in a game with so many horrible things, right? But Rom is a very special case. First of all, again, FromSoft, what the fuck is up with your proportions? This thing's body is enormous and its legs are so tiny. How the hell can it even walk or even stand up? Her face looks like a piece of dried coral in which someone strategically placed a little tiny eyeball in each one of the crevices. And the pièce de résistance, let's try that again. Ha ha! And the pièce de résistance, a tiny mouth which looks like a lamprey eel, my favorite, daddy-like.
Number 6. Blood-starved beast.
There are many creatures in Bloodborne which fall under the category of beast, which, from what I can tell, is basically some sort of werewolf. I would say that werewolves are not inherently scary because we're kind of desensitized to them. They've been making werewolf movies since the 1930s. But the blood-starved beast is a little bit unique. He is a special boy indeed, because one would have to be completely blind to not notice the fact that this dude's back has apparently been flayed open and his skin has been stretched over his head for some reason. Yeah, that's not insane at all. It's very normal, actually. Maybe you're the one that's insane. You ever think about that? Anyway, the blood-starved beast both moves and attacks like something that has literally been driven mad with hunger, which brings me to another point of Bloodborne that I find a little disturbing. The idea that a lot of the creatures in this game are actually kind of tragic and tortured, which adds a whole nother layer to the horror of this game. The blood-starved beast is the first boss in the game that made me say, "What the fuck?" And I think that makes him deserve a special mention. Oh yeah, and I completely forgot to mention, look at his face.
Look at it! Look at it! Number 5. Brain Sucker.
While the Brain Sucker is a regular enemy in the main game, he is a boss in the Chalice dungeons, and therefore I'm putting him on the list. Fight me. Now, it's pretty terrible that the Brain Sucker can literally siphon your insight from you, but I mean, come on, let's be real. He would be on the list even if he couldn't do that. The reason he's on the list is that disgusting, flesh-colored, phallic appendage on his head. God, it's so gross. Get this fucking thing off of me.
Number 4. Moon Presence.
Before we talk about the moon presence, I think it's worth taking a moment to talk about how you get to fight the moon presence. Do you know? Well, I'm going to tell you. To fight the moon presence, you have to ingest the equivalent of one entire umbilical cord. Yes, an umbilical cord.
Doesn't that sound nice? No.
So, what are we looking at here? We've got a big skeleton beast-like body. Very nice. We have giant monster claws. Very good. But then we have tentacles with tentacles growing on them, which, very nice touch. But what really is special about this creature is, look at its head. I mean, its head appears to have some sort of octopus tentacle thing going on the top, almost like it's a mane or something. But that face, I mean, what am I looking at? It's not even symmetrical. What is this? What is this?
Number 3. The One Reborn.
Okay, so a boss made out of dead guys in a FromSoft game isn't exactly breaking new ground. But the One Reborn, I'll be honest with you, he kind of brings that shit to the next level because he's basically Devastator from Transformers made out of dead guys. That's pretty badass. I gotta say, the attack where each arm and leg on this giant mass of corpses starts flailing really freaks me the hell out. I don't really know what that giant mass is underneath its body. It sort of looks like it's some sort of big giant pseudopod just designed to hold it stable. Whatever the hell it is, it's weird and it's creepy, and I find this whole thing very, very bothersome.
Number 2. Ludwig the Accursed.
This guy's face is like somebody took a horse's face, melted it, set it on fire, beat it with a hammer, and then forced it to work weekends. Ludwig is probably the best representation of body horror that I've ever seen in a video game. The extra legs coming from nonsensical places, the extra mouth on his neck that is just chock full of teeth, and the twisted grimace on his creepy horse face make Ludwig the Accursed not only one of the coolest looking bosses in any video game, but definitely one of the most disturbing.
Number 1. Ebrietas, Daughter of the Cosmos.
Holy shit, where do I even start? Ebrietas has this slug-like bottom that she slides around on. She has these just amazing tentacles coming out of her back that look like giant earthworms. Disgusting. Her wings make no logical sense. Look at those things. How can she even fly with that? From top all the way down to the bottom of her face, she has what appears to be barnacles on her head. That's stupendous. Also, the center of her face has this red fleshy mass, which closely resembles an open wound.
Excellent.
And just in case that you were not freaked out enough, Ebrietas actually has two little tiny green beady eyes on her face. So you can look right into those and just feel like you're having a really special time. I think the heart of horror is just like Mr. Lovecraft said, the fear of the unknown, and this boss fills me with questions of just what, how, why. It's the most Lovecraftian enemy I've ever seen in a video game, and I love it so much. Ebrietas, I tip my invisible hat to you, madam. You are by far the most disturbing boss that I've ever seen in a video game. Now that I'm through, I think I could use some therapy. Or maybe some madman's knowledge. Well, that was a lot of fun, and I've been really excited about doing this countdown. What did you think about the list? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more video game content on the way, such as more FromSoft playthroughs and more FromSoft countdowns. Thanks for watching, take care, and may you find your worth in the waking world.
Farewell, good hunter. May you find your worth in the waking world.
Boss runbacks. They're cool, right? No, I hate them. This is my list of the top 10 worst boss runbacks I can think of in any of the FromSoft games. But first, you knew I was gonna have a couple of honorable mentions, right? The first one is from Dark Souls 1, and I am of course talking about the run to Seath the bitch-ass Scaleless. Now odds are, you won't have to do this run, but if you do, you've got quite a run ahead of you because you've got to go down a ladder that you can't jump, because if you do, you take fall damage. Then you have to sprint across that grassy knoll and get chased by crystal golems just wanting to put their big old crystal fist just right up your little undead ass. And then you get to run across those invisible pathways that I don't really find to be that bad. It may just be because I'm so used to them now, but you're just making a really long haul all the way back to that boss again. And if you're not careful, those stupid clam guys, they can like kind of clip you on the way back to his room, and yeah, it's not a good time. The second honorable mention is from none other than Bloodborne, and of course, I am talking this time about the run to Martyr Logarius. If you fall to Martyr Logarius, which you probably will because, let's face it, he's pretty tough. Your run starts off running through a building, getting screamed at by ghosts, which aren't really that bad if you got your sound turned down a little bit. But the real kicker is when you have to go climb the ladder, which takes forever. Then you are going to be shot at by Mr. Blow Dart Man and just screw him and the horse that he rode in on. Then you get to do some parkour across the rooftops, which also kind of takes a minute. And then the last little lash that they get on you when you're trying to get to the boss is you take some fall damage, making it impossible to face Martyr Logarius with a full health bar and full heals in your inventory. Sucky. Now let's get to some real bullshit.
Number 10.
Old King Allant. This is the first boss runback we're gonna have on the list from Demon Souls, and when you fight Old King Allant, there is a very good chance that you're gonna die the first time because he is the hardest boss in the game. The run to Old King Allant begins with two archers shooting at you just as soon as you start making your way to him. Then you have to climb some stairs, deal with a couple red-eye knights, which are probably, you know, the toughest just regular enemies you can run into in the game. And I'm gonna say this run back would have been a lot higher if it wasn't for the fact that there is a shortcut allowing you to totally skip that dragon and the pyromancer guys, because oh my god, if you had to deal with that on every single run back, that would be just straight up hell. The last thing about this run back that just really brings my piss to a boil is the part where you get on the elevator that is the longest elevator that has ever existed. And I just want to know how come it couldn't have been slow like the first time, and then every subsequent time you have to do this, maybe just make it instant, or you know, make it like the elevator on Symphony of the Night. That's a elevator.
Number 9.
Grave Lord Nito. Are you surprised that the hardest level in Dark Souls also has the worst boss run back? You really shouldn't be, right? The run to Grave Lord Nito involves the player having to run past those horrible skeleton bears that just haunt my dreams. And this is a really long run. So you have to deal with the skeleton beasts, you have to run around the skeleton pillars that pop up and just scare the shit out of you. They're not that difficult to deal with. You can just run around them, but you're having to run around them on a ledge that you could, you know, misstep and fall, so could be an instant death there. But you have the psychological damage of them popping up and scaring you every time you make this run. and we have to deal with the cave full of pinwheels just all over the place, spamming lasers at you as much as possible. And the last annoying thing about this run is that you have to take quite a considerable chunk of fall damage just to enter the boss's arena. You neato.
Number 8.
Executioner's Chariot. Now, my friends, we're getting to the legendary king of the shitty runbacks, Dark Souls 2. The run back to the Executioner's Chariot is a pretty long trek. You have to go through the woods, dodge the butterflies that drop poison on you. There's a few spooky dudes hanging around with, you know, those big curved swords just hiding in the woods behind trees trying to get you. You have to cross 2 bridges, and then you get to this area that's like a little valley between this rock formation, and this area is really the worst spot in the run back because these scary executioner guys that have these axes, they can just clip you while you're trying to run past them, and they'll just drop down and just scare the crap out of you, and they'll be hitting you with this long-reaching weapon they got. It's really hard to get past these guys without getting hit. And then the last one has a whip with dark magic imbued into it. That's great. If you manage to actually make it past these guys, and I have died just going through that little area where they're at, but if you do manage to get past them, there's a scary bridge with holes in it, so you gotta be careful crossing that. And the last thing that they have are 2 naked dudes hanging off the bottom of the bridge to jump scare you, catch you off guard. I hate doing this run. It doesn't sound as bad, but when you do it, it sucks.
Number 7.
Blue Smelter Demon. Okay, now we're really getting into the really bad ones. The run back to the Blue Smelter Demon is infested with enemies. There are enemies every few steps, and they're all much bigger than you and have a weapon the size of your body, and they are really hard to avoid. To make it even worse, there are some douchebag mages casting this magic that actually slows your running down, making it even harder to dodge this infested hallway full of enemies. And if you manage to get past these guys, there is an even bigger guy with an even bigger weapon. This run back is nightmare fuel for me, and to top it off, you're dealing with the Blue Smelter Demon. He's one of the hardest enemies in Dark Souls 2, and there's a very good chance you're gonna die to him. All I can say is get prepared to do this one a couple times.
Number 6.
Sir Alan. The run back to Sir Alan somehow manages to be even worse than the Blue Smelter Demon run due to the fact that on Sir Alan's run, you have these skeleton knights with these katanas that they're constantly running straight at you and stabbing you the whole way through. Now that's already really intense because you're constantly dodging and running and rolling just the whole way to this boss. Then you have the lizards shooting fireballs at you at the same time, so you could get stabbed by a skeleton, then whacked by a fireball, and you know, you're not gonna have time to heal because there's another skeleton and another fireball coming in just a second. And when you get to the end of the run, there are archers trying to shoot at you. So you could potentially get caught with an arrow while you're going to the fog wall and die. Oh, and Sir Alan, he's hard as a T-Rex's shit. Enjoy.
Number 5.
Gank Squad. The Afflicted Grave Robber, Ancient Soldier Varg, and Sarah the Old Explorer. Yeah, Gank Squad is definitely much easier to say. The run back to these 3 assholes is really something. You have those lizards with the statues blocking your path. You've got knights running at you, swinging shit at you the whole time you're running. You have statues spitting petrify at you. Also, we're in a dark cave, so it's really easy to get turned around and lost in this particular run back. And the best part is, when you get to the very end, there are just a couple more of those petrify statues that potentially could end your life right there before you even make it to the fog wall. Finally, these three are really cheesy and really annoying, and if you don't have a summon, you're probably gonna lose. Good luck.
Number 4.
Old Hero. This boss run has you going the most massive distance. It's pretty insane. You have to deal with rolling skeletons, these super tall alien looking dudes who shoot scary green lasers at you, and did I mention that it's a long run to this boss? The one saving grace is if you do bring soul remains, you can throw them to distract the enemies that are going to be blocking your path. Some of them you're almost going to have to kill, but soul remains can occasionally let you slide by. Also, you're going to want to use the thief ring, because the thief ring will help any enemies that are not very close to you de-aggro. And the thief ring, most importantly, is going to be used when you fight this boss. Because if you do not cheese this boss, there is a chance, no matter how slight, that you'll have to do this run again. And that.
Number 3.
Ancient Dragon. So now we're back to Dark Souls 2 again. Did you miss it? Well, I've got news for you. The top 3 worst boss runs are all from Dark Souls 2. The Ancient Dragon has a long run. However, what makes the run even longer is the fact that you have to kill every single large knight in this area. And if you do not stop and fight each one and defeat him, the little dragon knights will aggro and proceed to swarm your ass until you are dead. Now you may think that this would be not a really big deal, because why don't you just run away like you do on most of the other boss runs, right? Just run to the door. Well, the problem is in Dark Souls 2, they didn't think you needed to be invincible the entire time you crossed through a fog wall. So that's just not gonna work. Also, the Ancient Dragon is such a major son of a bitch and has the biggest health bar ever. I kind of feel like I'm fighting that hidden boss in Symphony of the Night in the upside down catacombs, that his health bar is even bigger than Dracula's health bar. Like, what the fuck? Not to mention, his fire attack is pretty devastating. I hate fighting this guy, and I hate his boss run.
Number 2.
Dark Lurker. Why do we do this to ourselves? Was there really any call for this FromSoft? Let's not kid ourselves. You guys are pretty sick putting this boss with this boss run. If we were gonna fight, oh, I don't know, Jabba the Hutt at the end of this boss run, it wouldn't have been that bad. But we have to fight Dark Lurker, one of the most difficult bosses in the entire game. And we are faced with a boss run where, to begin, we have to find this old bitch and give him the most valuable consumable item in the entire game, a human effigy. You need human effigies to go from hollow form to have more of a health bar. You need human effigies to be human if you want to summon some help. So why in God's name would you make it to where I have to give a human effigy to refight a boss. I just don't understand you guys sometimes, FromSoft. I mean, you know, you treat us so good, and then every once in a while you do some shit like this, and I just don't understand it. So on the Dark Lurker boss run, you have to fight every NPC on the way. Now, it's not like the Ancient Dragon boss fight where there's a bunch of other NPCs that are gonna swarm you if you try to skip one, but you have to find every NPC on this path and kill them, or else the way to the boss will never be opened up for you. So this boss run takes quite a while, and if you die to Dark Lurker, you get to A, do it all again, and B, pay another human effigy. And if you run out of human effigies, you get to go farm human effigies. Let me just say that one more time, nice and clear and clean and slow, so we can all just think about what FromSoft put into this fucking game that we love and enjoy. You have to farm to do a boss run. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. And the #1 worst boss run in any FromSoft game is the boss run to Slave Knight Gale.
Nah, I'm just fucking with you.
Slave Knight Gale, it's like 5 steps. Thank you guys for giving us that boss run. That's probably the shortest boss run I can think of in any game. The real #1 is the god dang boss run to Lud and Zalin in the frigid outskirts. Let me tell you this, friends. I have seen the face of true horror. Just revisiting this boss run for the purposes of making this video brought me on the verge of a panic attack. It's that bad. This is not just the worst boss run I've ever played in a FromSoft game. It's not even just the worst boss run I've ever seen in any video game. This is one of the worst things that I've ever seen in a game ever. The boss that you have to fight at the end of this run is a gank boss, so that really sucks. Second of all, the second boss that is in this fight heals himself and buffs himself. Yeah, that's bullshit. You're gonna have to do this more than once. That's just ridiculous. Ooh, boy, oh boy. Let's talk about this run. Okay, snow levels in video games are not always the most fun thing, right? There are some games that have a snow level that I really like though. For instance, the snow level on Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. That's a great snow level. It's really fun. It's got these cool little Pizza Hut signs. Pretty sweet. But this is not like that level at all. There are no turtles performing jump kicks. There is no bear wearing a leather jacket. No, 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 no. We don't get any of those things. Not in the frigid outskirts. We get snowstorms. Snowstorms that make it to where you can't see at all. And yeah, they can cause you to start going the wrong way, making the boss run take even longer. But we're not here to talk about snow.
Are we?
We're here to talk about those f***ing reindeer. Because every time a snowstorm comes up, oh, you get plowed back down on your ass by a huge reindeer who appears to be imbued with some sort of dark magic, and that's probably one reason that they do so much damage. And the longer you take to kill these deer, and the longer you take to clear this area, they will keep spawning. So if you're super, super fast and really efficient, you may get through this boss run only having to deal with 2 of these bastards. But odds are you're not gonna do that. Odds are you're gonna fight 3, 4, 5 until you're dead. I swear I hate these deer so much. They're the worst enemy I can think of in any FromSoft game, and the fact that they can fly is just insane, because anything in a FromSoft game that can fly is pretty bullshit, seeing as how Elden Ring is the only one of these games that even lets you jump, and flying enemies aren't super easy to kill even in that game. This boss run is the worst thing ever. If you choose to just skip this part of Dark Souls 2, I do not blame you one bit. We can all thank Gavlon that luckily these awful boss runs are probably a thing of the past. And let's hope it stays that way, that the world might be mended. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that like button and subscribe to be notified about future content releases. Hit me up in the comments section if you've got any video suggestions, or if you just want to tell me about some boss runs that you hate. See you soon. Hi there. I was just enjoying a nice hot cup of Estus, and I started thinking about all the ugly sumbitches that live here in Lordran. But would you believe that there actually is a lot of cuteness here if you know where to look? Now I know you probably are a little bit skeptical and think that sounds a little crazy, but that's why I have a list, Gwen, damn it, of the top 15 cutest things you can find in Dark Souls.
Number 15.
Darkroot Garden's not really a place that you would find anything adorable, you might say. But if you go into the little hidden area, you can find these little red creatures that look like a frog crossed with a manta ray. And frogs are always cute, right? Well, most of the time. And these little jokers are no exception. The thing is, I'm putting them at the bottom of the list because depending on how you look at them, they can also be kind of icky looking.
Number 14.
The Abyss, the most mysterious place in a game full of places full of vague mystery. Not to mention, it's also a pretty scary place. But I'd be lying if I did not say that the Humanity Phantom's pretty cute. They're adorable in sort of a little chibi sort of way, like a baby doll. At least they are until you start to notice the hypnotizingly dazed way they just kind of come at you, and you start to suspect that maybe they're coming to take revenge for all of those times that you crushed one of them in your hand just so you could summon a buddy to help you beat a boss. Sorry guys, don't kill me. I will never do it again, I swear.
Number 13.
The opening cinematic to Dark Souls is one of extreme majesty and epic proportions. However, there is one boss showcased in the opening cinematic that just puts the biggest smile on my face every time I start a new game. And that, of course, is the part where they describe Gravelord Nito unleashing the miasma of death upon the world. And when he does so, his little bitty stick arms are just waving around and he's waddling back and forth like a little snowman baby or something. I love it. It's so cute.
Number 12.
The Artorias of the Abyss DLC has one of the most beautiful areas in the game, the Sanctuary Garden. However, some of the areas in the DLC are pretty creepy as the Abyss is creeping up and covering the surrounding areas, like the Ulasil Township. However, one of my favorite things in the DLC is not creepy at all, it's actually adorable. And what I'm talking about is the added feature that FromSoft in their godlike wisdom gave us little tiny clay pots that we can throw on the ground to now talk to our friends in co-op and PvP. And God bless them, they made us all have the same voice of an old man from New Jersey. Hello! I f***ing love it.
Hello. Hi, bitch. Number 11.
So let's talk about Blighttown. There's no way anything cute can be down there, right? Hear me out. the infested barbarians. I know if you look at them up close, ugh, right? But if you just kind of look at their general silhouette and the way they move, they kind of look like big fat bald babies wearing diapers, just running around playing with sticks. And then if you go down into the swamp, the big fat babies are even rolling balls of poo-poo and throwing them around. And I mean, you know, you gotta make do with what you got. They don't have beach balls down there. They gotta make a ball out of whatever. And is there anything more cute than seeing a baby just throwing a ball around? Well, actually there is. That's why there are 10 more entries on the list. But you get my point.
Number 10.
The legendary and illustrious sorcerer Big Hat Logan is interesting and endearing due to his lust for knowledge and desire to increase his powers as a mage. However, sometimes his intellectual pursuits actually land him in peril, like when he gets captured and locked up in Sin's Fortress, and then again gets locked up by Seath the Scaleless when we have to rescue him from the Duke's archives. Logan is an eccentric, interesting, fascinating, adorable little old man, and he is a very nice guy to us. That is, until he goes a little too far, and apparently the pursuit of knowledge drives him mad, in which case he tries to attack us and we're forced to kill him in self-defense. Such a shame. That big hat of his might have shielded him from prying eyes, but it could not shield him from the massive weight of the pursuit of endless knowledge.
Number 9.
So babies are cute, right? Well, once again, we have a dark, dreary, horrible nightmare of a level that in fact has one itsy bitsy little bright spot that always brings a smile to my face. And this time I'm talking about actual babies, not big, fat, disgusting men covered in their own shit. I've actually heard some people are creeped out by the skeleton babies in the Tomb of the Giants, and to that I just have to say, what on earth is wrong with you? I love these things. They're so damn adorable. I want to adopt 10 of them today. And if being cute wasn't enough, when you come down to see them, what do? They get their little hands up and they get all excited and they waddle to you because they want to come see you and play. It's precious.
Number 8.
In a world full of terrible, aggressive monstrosities, the crystal lizards are actually really sweet. They're skittish little creatures who, like real lizards, tend to try to hide from people, and the moment they are alerted to your presence, they just haul ass as fast as they can. In fact, they're so scared of you that they will even run right off of a cliff if it means getting away from the big bad man with the stick. And I have to admit, I feel a little guilty every time I kill one of these jokers just to get some upgrade materials to make my attack rating a little bit higher. But I had to do it. I'm sorry.
Number 7.
Now number 7 is going to be unique because here I have 3 separate entries and I will be going from least to most cutest. And that means I am talking about the mushroom people. So first, we're going to talk about the mushroom parents. Now the mushroom parents, they're kind of cute. You know, they're mushrooms and they have little eyes and they walk around with their little stubby arms and legs, and that's already kind of adorable. They sort of look like Ewoks, but they're infinitely more appealing. While the mushroom parents do look like they have mud on them, or maybe even blood, they still are definitely going to be on this list for me in terms of cuteness because of the fact that A, they just will wallop the shit out of you if any of their little babies get intruded on in the forest or feel threatened. And B, just look at them holding hands with their kids. It just warms my heart. Next we have Elizabeth, a sweet, kindly mushroom lady who resides in the Sanctuary Garden of Ulasil. And boy, I kind of get the feeling that she's sort of like the nanny of Princess Dusk because she's the one who contracts you, the player, to go save her from that scumbag Manus. Of course I will, you sweet old lady. You're like the grandma of Dark Souls, who is also a mushroom. And finally, we have the most precious fungus in all the land. Of course, I am talking about the Mushroom Child. In another rare case, the Mushroom Child is a creature of Dark Souls who does not attack you on sight. In fact, these rascals just want to run around and play in the woods just like Christopher Robin. They're so cute. And if you ever attack one of these little sweethearts, you are a terrible person. Just listen to the sound they make when you kill one. You bastard.
Number 6.
After defeating Artorias, arguably the best fight in the entire game, you find a female knight crouching at his tombstone and asks you if you would be willing to give her his soul so that she may use it to pay proper respect to his memory. Ciaran was a member of one of the 4 Knights of Gwyn and worked alongside Artorias, and according to some cut dialogue from Hawkeye Go, actually had unrequited feelings for him.
If thine was the blade to which Artorias fell, then thou must be wary of Kiran. She had strong feelings for the great Artorias. The poor girl.
Considering the exchange that we have with her, I suspected as much. If you've ever loved somebody who didn't love you back, the story of Ciaran and Artorias can be pretty heartbreaking. However, it's also really sweet to see that even after the great knight has passed, she still maintains that love for him.
Number 5.
One of the most beloved NPCs in Dark Souls? Try one of the most beloved NPCs in all of gaming. We first encounter Solaire immediately after killing the Taurus demon in the Undead Burg, and find him gazing up at the majestic sun. Solaire is a unique NPC in the world of Dark Souls in that he is surprisingly chipper and friendly, as opposed to the cast of usual creepy assholes. After having a nice conversation with Solaire, we learned that he is willing to be our buddy and help us out along in our adventures, and also that he is on a quest to find his very own son. And let's not forget the greatest line in the entire game.
The sun is a wondrous body, like a magnificent father. If only I could be so grossly incandescent.
Throughout the game, our boy is there to lend a hand like a good, dependable companion. However, if he's not saved in Los Izalith, one of those damn bugs will just drive him crazy, and we'll have to kill him to put him out of his misery. If you do manage to kill the bugs before they can drive him crazy, he still doesn't get a happy ending. He becomes crestfallen and just realizes that there is no son for him, and he gets depressed. But who knows? Maybe he recovers. I mean, after all, he is there to help us fight Gwyn at the end of the game. Every time I play through Dark Souls, I hope that there's just some sort of way that you can make Solaire's story just a little bit happier. It's ironic, really, that Solaire spends the whole game trying to find his own son, but he is actually the brightest spot in the entire story. Love you, buddy.
Number 4.
After approaching the most ominous fortress in the entire game, we discover a curious knight taking a nap in the most bulky and goofy looking armor that we've ever seen. Bro is always taking naps, and it's pretty cute. I guess he kind of reminds me of a cat that way. Sigmire is pretty adorable in the fact that he is very worthless and bumbling, but tends to have a pretty jolly disposition throughout all of the game. We pretty much have to do everything for the old boy, but that's okay. It's nice to have him around. However, at the very end, when we go to Lost Izalith, he decides that he wants to hop down and help us fight those spooky chaos eaters. The thing is, If he takes too much damage, he dies, which is sad. However, if he gets down there and he doesn't take too much damage, he will live. The problem is, in typical Dark Souls fashion, this story doesn't have the happiest ending. What transpires is that Sigmire goes all the way to Ash Lake and we find his dead body laying by the bonfire, accompanied by... Who's this? Oh, that's Sigland. Sigland is Sigmire's daughter, and she is absolutely precious. In fact, now that I think about it, is she more precious than Sigmire? After listening to Sigland describe the events, Sigmire went crazy and started attacking her, and she had to kill him out of self-preservation. Now, that sweet little voice is adorable enough, but the fact that she just wanted the best for her daddy is just so sweet, and I love her. She's adorable. As a dad with a daughter, I've got to say that the story of Sigmire and Sigland really hit me hard. Daddy's little girl, man. It's precious.
Number 3.
You knew this moment was coming. Who doesn't love dogs? Nobody, that's who. The most popular pet in the entire world also happens to be the pet of choice for our beloved knight Artorias. And who could blame him? And is she a good girl? You bet your sweet undead ass she's a good girl. When you encounter the grave of Artorias in Darkroot Garden, Sif pounces into action to protect her daddy's final resting place. It's so precious I can barely even stand it. And depending on whether or not you cleared the DLC before coming here, Sif will actually come up to you and sniff you out after detecting a familiar scent on you. And about that DLC, when you go to fight Manus, the father of the abyss, you actually get the opportunity to summon who? A little baby puppy Sif. Oh my god, it's the cutest thing I've ever seen. How did they even have something this adorable in Dark Souls? Oh, I know why. They have it so that they can break our hearts later when we have to kill her. Just so we can get that damn ring to go into the abyss. Whew. We're assholes, man.
Number 2.
I'm not actually comfortable with the name Crossbreed Priscilla. Personally, I think that sounds a little disrespectful. She's just Priscilla to me. A beautiful half-dragon lady who has probably inspired countless furry and Rule 34 content. Priscilla is absolutely precious with her cute face and soft, pleasant voice with which she asks you if you would just leave and let all the inhabitants of the painted world just be.
If thou hast misstepped into this world, plunge down from the plank and hurry home.
It is rumored that Priscilla might be the daughter of Seath the Scaleless, and you know what? I really don't care. I love her. She's wonderful. Priscilla is the only boss in the entire game that would rather you just leave her alone. And did you know that if you actually are a sick enough asshole to harm a hair on this beloved little sweetheart's head, you will actually get an NPC sin? So that tells you right there, even FromSoft wants to protect Priscilla. And who wouldn't? She's adorable.
Number 1.
Full disclosure, I have gone back and forth about whether or not I should include Guinevere on the list. Is she cute? Absolutely. But not exactly in the way that a baby or a puppy is cute. You know what I'm saying? I mean, she is a very well-endowed, attractive lady in the humanoid form. We'll just leave it at that. There's no denying that every player was struck dumb for a moment after seeing this beauty following the heart-pounding battle with Ornstein and Smo. So yeah, I'm sorry, Guinevere is cuter than a mushroom. And even though technically in Dark Souls 1, Guinevere is merely an illusion created by her brother Gwendolyn to manipulate the player, I'd say the kid played his hand pretty damn well. Because if you're not gonna simp for Priscilla, you're probably simping for Guinevere. I mean, come on. who did not immediately join the princess's guard just to get in her favor. Finally, if it just really bothers you that I put an illusion at number 1, just imagine she did exist at some point, and maybe just exists somewhere in the Dark Souls universe that doesn't take place in the game currently. And if that still bothers you, then Priscilla can be your number 1. Wow, that was quite a list. There were just so many things to talk about, and you guys gave me so many suggestions while I was still writing the script that I had to include everybody that I could. As always, if I manage to leave off something that needs to be included in this list, please let me know about it in the comments section. I really appreciate it when you guys do that. And make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so that you can be notified when a new release goes up. I just want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for showing up to the premiere. It was a lot of fun talking to you guys live, and I want to give a special shout out to the Dildo for not only giving me a very generous super chat, but also for giving me my very first super chat. So this is crazy. I was so excited I had to tell everybody at work about it. And in closing, I just want to thank each and every one of you for what you've done to help me with this channel and really get it going. Some of you guys have been supporting me since I started doing this thing a couple months ago, and some of y'all just are jumping on and just being so nice and supportive, and I just can't thank you enough. I mean, some of you guys write the nicest comments. This is like the nicest things anybody's ever said to me, and I love you guys. Make sure you don't forget to like the video if you want to see more stuff like this, and I just can't thank you guys enough. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Look at that, man. The great outdoors, huh?
That's right. I'm out here in beautiful Harvest Valley. Just smell all that poison. Hanging out in this poison level reminds me of all the unique ideas that the series has to offer. And since I'm hanging out in Dragon Lake, why don't we discuss my picks for the top 10 unique innovations from that red-headed stepchild of Miyazaki, Dark Souls 2. But first, I want to call attention to a few honorable mentions. And the first of those is going to be the invisible hollows and the invisible moths, because whenever a light gets cast on them, it puts a shadow on the wall, and then you can hit them. Next, I would like to discuss the life gems. Now, I know that life gems are a contentious subject amongst Dark Souls fans, but I actually feel like they were implemented by the development team to offset some of the much harder areas of Dark Souls 2, especially seeing as how with this game, they just decided to just fill it with enemy spam. Another really cool change that Dark Souls 2 implemented, you can use your human effigies to go human after you have left the bonfire. To me, that's the best strategy, because who wants to go ahead and go human, get the extra life bar, possibly be able to summon help, and then die before you even get to the boss room? I think this was a great change. And the last honorable mention is that when you want to make a boss weapon, all you gotta do is go find your homeboy in the Bastille, Strayed. And what's great about Strayed is he doesn't require you to upgrade your weapon to some crazy degree like you do in Dark Souls 1. You simply give him the boss soul, and boom, there you go. And now it's time for the moment we've all been waiting for. Time to piss off the Dark Souls 2 haters. I'm sorry. Number 10. Personally, I've never done this one, but I do know that it's a great change that they put into Dark Souls 2. When you accidentally or intentionally kill an NPC, a tombstone will come up in Majula and you can buy them back. If you're playing Dark Souls 1 and somehow you manage to, oh, I don't know, piss off and accidentally or intentionally kill that wonderful hunk of man meat, Andre of Astora, you are without a blacksmith until you get to Anne Orlando. I hope you like pyromancy. Thankfully, in Dark Souls 2, this is not a problem. Here's to never having to take responsibility for our actions. Number 9. Now the haters are gonna say that being able to warp anywhere at the beginning of the game in Dark Souls 2 is just a product of bad level design. But I am totally okay with being able to warp whenever I want, because warping whenever I want is just like eliminating bad runbacks. It saves me time. Let's say that you completed a level, but you feel like maybe there were a few items you probably missed. Now you can just warp back there and go explore the stage and check it out for yourself. Or let's say that you killed a boss and you want to go talk to Strayed like we just talked about a few minutes ago. What are you going to do? You going to run all the way to the Lost Bastille? Is that what you're going to do? No, you're going to warp there. How convenient. Number 8. And now we have a feature that was implemented in Scholar of the First Sin. That windmill puzzle that nobody would have ever figured out. In fact, it was pretty hard to figure out even with help, because the developers put this phantom NPC in Earthen Peak, and if you summon him, he will walk over to where the windmill is and pull up his binoculars for a nanosecond and then put them back down, and somehow we're supposed to interpret that as set it on fire. Luckily, this kind of evolved into the ghosts that we see in Elden Ring that are really cool, because those guys lead you to secrets and there is no vagueness about it because they literally walk right to the secret. Number 7. Only one game in the series spams enemies at you quite as much as Dark Souls 2 does. So the development team implemented a feature that if you kill the enemies enough in that area, they will actually stop spawning, as long as you're not in the Covenant of Champions, especially if you're going to try to do the, what's that one run back that really blows? While I feel like despawning enemies is really more of a band-aid to fix a much bigger problem, I gotta say, I do at least appreciate the team for trying to do something to alleviate our pain. Number 6. And now it's time for another idea so great that it ended up in Elden Ring. Of course, I'm talking about those scary faces that are found on the floors and walls of Drangleic that you put a device into to open up a hidden room or a switch. The Ferrous Lockstones of Dark Souls 2 are echoed by the Stone Sword keys of Elden Ring. And in both games, sometimes the switch will open up a route to treasure, sometimes nothing, and sometimes even a trap. Of course, this shouldn't come as too big of a surprise, seeing as how much of Dark Souls 2 was designed to troll us. Number 5. And now we have a feature that has not returned to its full glory ever since its heyday in Dark Souls 2. And I am talking now about the torch. Yes, Dark Souls 3 does have a torch, but it's really just used for seeing in front of you and getting rid of those bastard maggots. I hate them so much! In contrast, Dark Souls 2 utilized the torch in many different interesting ways. In Things Betwixt, Dark Souls 2 shows us how the torch can be utilized to light braziers to increase visibility in the area. However, when we get to No Man's Wharf, we get to find out that oil can be ignited by the fire, and the torch is very useful for scaring away the Dark Dwellers, which are one of the most horrifyingly creepy things in Dark Souls 2. You can even use the torch to get McDuff to get up off of his duff by lighting the sconce next to his anvil. And if you go into the Undead Crypt and you light the braziers down below, you can summon dark spirits to fight you. And what do you get for beating them? It's a secret. And that's not all. You can even use your handy dandy torch to light those oil puddles on fire so the monsters don't come out to get your ass. With all of the interesting ideas they've come up with using the torch, I cannot believe they have not brought this stuff back. Come on, FromSoftware. We need the Swiss Army knife of Dark Souls. Number 4. Have you ever fought a boss that you liked so much that you thought, hey, I'd like to fight him again, but I don't want to start a whole new playthrough? Or maybe you found a boss who just happens to give a ridiculous amount of souls every time you kill him, and you kind of want to farm him? Or what if it's a boss that you actually need multiple copies of his soul to make multiple items? Well, have I got a deal for you? Because if the area boss is deceased, all you gotta do is burn this little bonfire ascetic in the area, and you will respawn all of the wooden treasure chests, you will respawn all of the enemies, and you will respawn the area boss. Also, the surrounding area will increase 1 new game cycle, so everything's gonna be a little bit more difficult. Have fun. While the bonfire ascetic does have its share of haters, I think it's an interesting concept, and I think it's a very good example of the development team thinking outside of the box. Number 3, swords are cool. But what if you could hold 2 swords? Yeah, that. I want to do that. Well, in Dark Souls 2, you can. After all, Bloodborne did teach us that shields are for wusses, so why not put something that belongs in that left hand, like a sword, just like the good Lord intended. Having the ability to inflict poison on one hand and bleed with the other can completely decimate an opponent. For some stupid reason, Dark Souls 3 only lets you dual wield with specific weapons. But praise the sun, because some legend at FromSoftware decided to bring that stuff back for Elden Ring. That man deserves a raise. Woo! Dual wielding, baby. Is there any better way to fight? Number 2. As a matter of fact, there is. It's called Power Stance. If you have 150% of the required stats for your weapons, and both of the weapons that you choose to dual wield have the same attack type, just press the button that makes you two-hand, and now you're in Power Stance. It's freaking amazing. So, you hit your block button, and it causes you to swing both weapons at the same time. And your parry button, it's no stupid parry now. Now you do an ultra strong attack with both of your dual wield Power Stance weapons. Yeah! Power Stance is for the ultimate fighter who wants to go for maximum bonk bonk. Eat red Cheeto, noob! And now it's time for my number 1 pick, which is the ability to respec your character. For those new to the Souls series, the stats screen and the process of leveling your character properly can be quite a daunting and intimidating task. But even a seasoned player sometimes feels like they want to change up their build, and now, thanks to Dark Souls 2, we have that ability. And the ability was so cool that they put the feature in Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring. Hell yeah! In fact, it feels a little weird to be playing a FromSoftware game that doesn't let you respec. But that's okay, because we will forgive Bloodborne because it's so awesome! So there you have it. The respec feature is my favorite innovation from Dark Souls 2 because it means I don't have to start a character from scratch just to try a new build. And that saves me that most precious of consumables, time. Now that I'm through gushing about Dark Souls 2, I would like to ask you, what are some of your favorite innovations that were introduced from the black sheep of the series? Hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed the video and you want to see more stuff like this. Make sure you subscribe and turn on them notifications so that you get alerted the next time a video goes up. Before ending, it is my duty to recognize and acknowledge the fantastic subscribers who have gone above and beyond in support of the channel and myself. The Deal Doe for his extremely generous super chats and super thanks. Lost Boko, thank you so much for your generous contributions. And I have to point out that now the channel officially has 2 members, and the first 2 members of the channel are Telemrack and Last Bulbasaur. Thank you guys. You make me proud to do what I'm doing. I also want to thank everybody who's been joining on the live streams and chatting and just keeping me company and giving me tips while I'm on my Elden Ring playthrough. Even 9 hours of Elden Ring doesn't feel that long with you guys. And a special thanks to Hyper Kira for saving my sorry ass in so many boss fights. You're the man. And finally, I have to thank every single one of you that has watched, liked, commented, and subscribed to the channel. Thank you all so much. I couldn't do this without you. See you next time. Boo! Happy Get Good-a-ween. I bet you didn't expect that. What I didn't expect was for FromSoftware to not only be able to creep me out, but also make me jump right out of my skin. These games have a knack for keeping you on edge and therefore primed for a good startle. As you can see, I've brought my trusty dexterity weapon in case something creepy shows up, and I've got my trick-or-treat bucket in case anybody wants to hand out some goodies. All I've gotten so far was a prism stone. But I'm still super pumped, so crack open a blood vial and break out the candy corn because it's Halloween and I'm counting down my picks for the top 10 jump scares in FromSoftware games. But before proceeding with the countdown, let's talk about the honorable mentions. A great way to set up a good jump scare is to have something sitting still that moves when you don't expect it to happen. And there just happens to be a very specific room in Aldea's Keep that does this.
Oh my God!
The first time I came into this room, I was actually stupid enough to think that dragon was for decoration only. As soon as his head started turning, I get nervous still coming back. Ah, dungeons. Ever since the Tower of Latria on Demon Souls, FromSoftware has proven that they are the masters of creating super creepy levels. And when they decided to make the Irithyll dungeon in Dark Souls 3, they kicked it up a notch by not just having creepy jokers like this guy, they also decided to put some jump scares in here. This time the jump scare isn't from something you see, it's from something you hear. And just randomly exploring the Irithyll dungeon, you will all of a sudden jump out of your seat when a shriek slices through the musty dungeon air and just totally throws you off your game. I salute you, Miyazaki. Very well done. Speaking of Dark Souls 3, if you talk to Grandpa in the cleansing chapel next to the altar, he whisks you away to a magical land of snow. The Painted World in the original Dark Souls is one of my favorite levels in the game. But after Dark Souls 2, I'm not as fond of snow anymore. But it's alright, baby, because Dark Souls 3 is here to rectify that mistake, and the Painted World of Ariandel is even better than Ariamis, even though it's a little less cute. Here you'll find many terrifying creatures, but only one managed to make me throw my controller all the way through my ceiling. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get on top of your house without a ladder? Anyway, so let's talk about these tree ladies. So I couldn't help but notice when I first entered the DLC of Dark Souls 3, a couple of the trees look a little different from the other ones. But if you walk up to them, you notice that they don't move or do anything. In fact, you can't even attack them. And herein lies the brilliance of this jump scare, because the next time you run into the trees, they will grab you and you will find out that it is extremely easy to get to first base with the tree ladies of Ariandel. Just make sure that at some point during the date you apologize for screaming and excuse yourself to change your underwear. Pound for pound, the spookiest game that FromSoftware has ever made, Bloodborne has a shocking moment that I'm pretty sure none of us will ever forget. When you get to the Forbidden Woods, which is a very simple and straightforward level that nobody would ever get lost in, you eventually come up to a house, which appears to be mostly empty, except for one guy. Now this guy is special because he marks a turn in the narrative of Bloodborne, and even after taking so much as a single hit from you, he will appear to get a really bad headache, and then his head explodes and a shitload of snakes pop out of his neck. If you're like me and you're scared to death of snakes, then I don't blame you if you had to clean yourself up after this moment. And I'm serious. I'm not joking. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm really that scared of snakes. I used to have recurring nightmares about being trapped in a house full of snakes. Needless to say, Bloodborne got me really good with this one. The very large snake head can grab you and hold you and do damage over time like a constrictor, and then the smaller heads will bite you and inflict poison. Good shit. So to recap, I have poop in my pants, I don't know what's going on, and I'm dead. Well played, Michael Zaki. If there's one thing that I appreciate in a FromSoftware game, it is those brief moments of relaxation. You know what I'm talking about, like those periods of time after you kill the boss. But of course, when you kill the boss of the Undead Parish, the gargoyles, you get to go up and even ring the bell and trigger a cool cutscene, right? But then when you come back down, something is different. And that something is Oswald of Kareem, quite possibly one of the creepiest NPCs to ever appear in a video game. This also creates a very unique jump scare in which, instead of something happening to me, I kind of rushed on down the ladder into him and it caught me off guard. It's all good, my man. I still love you, even if you are a creepy asshole. And now, boys and girls, it's time to bring on the real jump scares. Number 10. What's the one thing in a Soulsborne game that gives you more comfort than anything else? Smo's chest? Demon booty? Priscilla's feet? Well, yes, but I was specifically thinking about bonfires. But in Dark Souls 2, after a certain patch, Aldia, the Scholar of the First Sin, was added into the game as a boss. After lighting your final primal bonfire, Aldia would actually emerge from the bonfire to speak spooky Dark Soul shit at you.
No one has come this far for a very long while. Your Honor, you wish to shake this curse?
But Aldia is not going to show up subtly like the grandpa from Troll 2. No, he's got to bust onto the scene like a f***ing pro wrestler, causing a massive explosion, knocking you right on your ass. This scared the crap out of me the first time it happened. Quite a sin indeed. Number 9. On my first playthrough of Elden Ring, I remember somebody in the chat telling me that we were going to go to Caria Manor and then Nightmare Fuel. Okay. And I just kind of laughed it off. But oh my God, I was not ready for this.
Longer.
Oh God! Oh my God! Oh my God! What the fuck? What is this? It looks like somebody took the mutagen from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and poured it onto Thing. These hands are enormous, disgusting, and have entirely too many fingers. And it's bad enough that they make a beeline straight to your ass as soon as they see you. There's actually some out there in the courtyard that are under the ground and all you can see are their little fingernails sticking up out of the dirt. But you know, because you're scared as shit, you're running away from them really fast and you're not gonna see that. So then you're gonna run over them and they're gonna get you.
Oh dude, I saw the fingers. I saw them and they grabbed me before I could react.
These scary ass things show up in many locations in the lands between, but nothing can match that first time you encounter them in Caria Manor. Number 8. As you can see, the FromSoftware gaming library is just rich with jump scares. And the very first one that I have burned into my brain is my maiden trip to the Valley of Drakes. And upon seeing that pile of treasure next to the corpse of a rotting dragon, I knew I had to have it all. If you pick up the right piece first, nothing happens. But then, when you pick up the next piece, wow, I really did not expect that. So now I'm dead and my nerves are shot. Number 7. I hope you're not scared of spiders, because we're about to talk about a real nasty one. There are 2 specific instances where I recall being jump scared by this guy, and both are situations where you are trapped in the corner. The first one is found in the Cathedral of the Deep when you go into a room with nothing in it, and then this happens. The second one is when you're all the way up to Anne Orlando. And then, lucky you found the shortcut to open up the giant door. But who's there to greet you? Getting jump scared by one of the most horrifying things in the entire FromSoftware catalog, whew, is traumatizing. Number 6. The next one is a jump scare that occurs all throughout Dark Souls 3. Aren't we lucky? In another instance of seeing something that appears to be dead, coming to life and just scaring the ever-loving shit out of you. The cage spider, or as I like to call it, the cage with all the dudes in it, just sits there. But then, when you come up to the wrong one, oh God, it is so f***ing scary. The first time these guys scared the crap out of me, it was of course in the Undead Settlement. But FromSoftware thought that, you know, Irithyll Dungeon wasn't scary enough, so they also put these guys here. Appreciate you. Number 5. What could be more unassuming than a simple hollow? Exactly. That's why one of the best jump scares in Dark Souls 3 shows up when a giant maggot Kawato jumps out of his stomach and grabs you, causing you to urinate all over the dungeon. As a bonus, you encounter these guys super early in the level, so you are on the edge of your seat for the entire area. Good. Number 4. This entry is going to belong to an entire group. And that's because ever since the first time I played Demon's Souls, dragons, as big as they are, somehow have the ability to sneak up on you and scare the ass out of you. Whether you're talking about that first dragon in 1-2 of Demon's Souls, the one that shows up at the beginning of Dark Souls, talking about Calamite jumping on the bridge, you're talking about the ancient dragon in Dark Souls 3, and God knows how many of them in Elden Ring that just land on you when you least expect it. FromSoftware wants you to know that dragons are the Jason Voorhees of their game series, and no matter where you are, they will just pop out of nowhere to get you. Number 3. By a show of hands, how many of you were surprised that something spooky happened in a level full of spooky skeletons? Yes, as one would imagine, the Catacombs of Carthus, while being home to one of the silliest things in the entire game, a ball of skeletons, it is also home to quite the startle. To set the scene for this jump scare, we enter a room that seems pretty inconspicuous by Dark Souls standards. That is, except for that suspicious looking goblet in the center of the room. Should I touch this thing? Ah, too late, I'm doing it. Whoa, 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 shit, I was just kidding.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Holy crap, you guys, that was so frackin' scary. Seriously, on my first playthrough, my skeleton jumped out of my body. Number 2, always being concerned with holding a high standard for quality. FromSoftware made sure that the best jump scare in Bloodborne was not relegated to a single area. You can rest assured that during your Bloodborne playthrough, werewolves will be popping in through windows. Werewolves will be busting through doors on the streets. At any time, they can get you. These giant furry beasts may not be the most disturbing things you see in Bloodborne, but when it comes to jump scares, they go harder than anybody else. And the number 1 FromSoftware jump scare is those giant Cyclops hippopotamus ogres from Dark Souls 2. You know what? That's too much. Let's just call them hip ogres. While these guys just tend to roam around freely throughout Dark Souls 2, in Aldia's Keep, they specialize in jump scaring the piss out of you.
Oh my god, what the f?
Much like how the Mimic in Dark Souls 1 teaches you to be wary of every treasure chest you find, the hip ogres in Aldia's Keep will make you nervous about ever opening a door again.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes you can see them through the tiny holes through the door, and sometimes you can't see them at all. And I just cannot deal with these guys. Whenever I'm playing Dark Souls 2, the whole neighborhood knows it because they can hear me screaming down the street. Sometimes people like to joke that my gray hairs came from my children, but if you've ever played Dark Souls 2, you know where they came from. They came from the hip ogres. See this, Miyazaki? This is your fault. Ooh, boy, that was a lot of fun. We're all nice and full of trauma, and you know, FromSoftware, you guys scare me like nobody else. I love you. There's nothing like a good scare to make you really feel alive. You know what I mean? Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to get notified when the next one goes up. It's Halloween, but we're not just sharing candy. Share the video with one of your buddies if you think they'd like it. And finally, it is time to acknowledge all of my beautiful, charming, and intelligent supporters. When my last countdown went up, I had 2 members on the channel, and since then we have ballooned up to 20. I am completely blown away, you guys. In order, we have Last Bulbasaur, Ludwig, and this name is in kanji, so I thank you, but I do not know how to read kanji, but I love you. Zexy Gummy Bear, Guinea Piglet, Sir Sieg, Theremin Electro, Patrick Ripley III, Ethan Tennell, Des the Great One, Nuke San, Dark Eater Madeir, Hughie, Uncertainly, I figured it out, Telemrack, Death Metal Pokemon Fan, Robco17, Magonator, Alec Bryan, I'll figure it out. And our newest member, Lorian Elder Prince. Thank you all so much. You have a great day. You are the channel of the backbone. Thank you all so much. I hope you all enjoy your day. Y'all are the backbone of this channel. Woo! Man, that was quite a long video. I can't believe I was able to sit here and just watch all of that without even having to get up or pee or anything. Normal Horse, what did you think about the marathon?
I thought the video was very informative and also very arousing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you mean. So, what did you guys think about the marathon? Hopefully you enjoyed it and had a good time. Maybe you even caught a few Z's in the middle of it, because it was pretty damn long. If you enjoyed it and want to see more content of this nature, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to give the video a like if you enjoyed it and share it with your friends. And I will see you next time.